Moving into debate number 2. Who here wasn't here for the first debate? Hands up. Okay, we have some new people. I'm going to run through the rules really quickly. We have half an hour set aside. We have invited members of the public to the front row to pick sides. I'm going to say this side is the disagree side, and this side is the agree side. Is that good with the people sitting in the front row? Okay, we'll figure that out later. Basically, everybody gets 2 minutes to speak. We have comments from both sides. You introduce an idea, you can rebut it, or you can introduce new ideas, and at the end we'll ask people to reflect on what they learned and deliver some closing statements. We have city staff present who are a resource to you. We don't want to be debating facts. We don't want to say this number versus this number. We want to be debating ideas. So if we can provide you with any numbers, any background you need to help inform your arguments, we're here for that. If at any point you want to do a fact check, just tell me from the microphone. It's a fact check. The microphones work. When you press the button, all the microphones are live. When you press the button, you see the light lit up. It is on. I do need to remind you that city staff are here to speak and offer ideas, but they are speaking for the sake of argument. They're not expressing their own opinions or the city's opinions. They're just here to keep the debate flowing. Do we have any questions before we begin? At the back of the room.
I have one question. The second part here seems very much like the first part, so I'm wondering if you could clarify what the difference is.
Between
balancing priorities in books and funding versus aspirations, and then you're moving to focus versus multiple priorities. And I'm trying to sort of make out the difference between the delivery on a limited number of priorities. I mean, it seems like the same question but put a different way. So if you did that, I just want to know why and to clarify.
So that's exactly why staff are here. I'm going to ask somebody to kind of clarify the idea behind the motion, behind the resolution.
What I will say is, when we first laid this out, you're right. It did end up, the first debate did end up actually bleeding a little into this, did end up bleeding a little into the second debate. What we were looking especially to explore in that first debate was this question of focusing on sort of a limited number of priorities. Did we need, when we talk about aspirations, to just really be a question of honing things down when we have those discussions and when we look at our capital plan? Or do we need to sort of leave it open and leave it at larger scale? When we were talking about this particular debate, sorry, I'm just looking at it again. This one was really more about the priority setting itself. Sorry, no. The second one, first one was more on the capital side. This one was originally intended to discuss more about the priorities when we're talking about how we set or make those decisions around the capital side. They're interrelated, certainly, but it was what is the core pieces that we set in order to make that decision around the projects. I'm sorry, this is really squeaking a lot. I'm not sure, does that clarify it a bit for you? Or they are definitely interrelated, and certainly the first debate ended up coming very much towards and at times into this debate.
Okay. Yes. So,
do you want to talk to it a little bit, Carter, as well? I don't know if you have anything.
I can give it another shot, just perhaps oversimplifying, but might be helpful. So on the first one, we're saying we bring something forward to council. If you don't have money to pay for it, don't approve it. Or approve it, and we will figure out later how we're going to pay for it. That was the core of the discussion. This one, we're moving to a slightly different kind of question. Within the money we do have, should we invest that money in one thing? All of this money in one thing or in two things, and trying to just really move the needle on that one, two things for the next couple of years? Or let's spread the money and invest in a bunch of things at the same time and try to gradually sort of address all the problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll invite people to move to the front of the room. Just please fill in the front desk. If you don't want to speak, let's get everybody in. Let's keep it intimate and close. If you haven't already, go vote on the board if you have a strong opinion. And you do have it on the bottom half of page 6 of your workbook. You have the resolution and a chance to give us more in-depth ideas. So I have said, what did I say? I said agree is over here, disagree is over here? Other way?
Agrees over here.
Agrees over here? Disagrees over here.
Over here.
This is agree, that's disagree. There is no middle ground. I'm sure we. Yeah. All right, I'll give the teams a couple minutes to get organized. You have city staff as a resource. Everybody, if you haven't voted already, go do so. Okay. Are my teams ready to begin? All right, I'm looking to Beth on the agree side. Come on up. All right. Okay. So I will be running the timer. I ask that you limit your comments to about 2 minutes, but I'm not going to be very strict. The agree side has some opening comments. Please state your name. Another minute? That's the agree side. Agree is over here. Agree. All right. Is agree ready to present the opening arguments?
I have a question.
Okay, question.
This statement is slightly different from this statement here.
Yeah, it was slightly modified from when the workbook was
So
printed.
this debate talk about focus on one.
No, limited, a few.
Yeah.
Okay, so not only one.
No.
A few key problems is a little
More
bit.
accurate.
Yes, it should be a few key priorities.
Yeah, because it's fundamentally
Yeah.
different. So
Limited number.
Yeah.
If you have 10 and then you
that's why I stay on this side.
Okay. All right. You can see we're figuring things out right at the last minute. We were refining language. All right, the agree side, opening comments. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll start a little bit. So when we look
What's your name?
at Tim Lines.
Tim, hi.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. When you take a look at this question, you really have to sort of be honest with yourself and how problems get solved. So when you have a lot of priorities, what ends up happening is people all rush to do them all because everybody wants it now. They want it today. They want it to make that impact. And there's so many people and so many issues, how do you sort this all out? But what you need to do is you need to prioritize these issues. And when you have a finite set of resources, you have to work on the highest priorities first. And so come up with your top, let's say 10 focused issues, hone your ability, put your resources into really achieving something, solving it. So then the problem doesn't exist ever again. You solve it, you resolve it, you can move on. And then over time, when you look back, you'll see that rather than just having moved 3,000 issues 1 centimeter forward, you've solved 100 things very, very well, and you're starting to make progress onto all these other priorities that you may not have been able to do. So I would argue that you really need to just focus your attention on a couple of key priorities to allow you to have that impact and actually do what you say you're going to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving over to the disagree side for opening comments.
So the city is too complex to focus on.
Your name, please?
Oh, it's Shanali, city staff. So I'll just start things off and I'll pass it on. So the city is too complex to focus on one priority. We have a diverse set of needs, and the needs are interconnected. If we decided we were just going to focus on roads and let our parks fall apart, or just focus on transit and let the housing fall apart, then at the end of the day, we haven't really accomplished what we need to for our residents. So we actually need to address the issues at the same time to and just focus on how we balance how much we're addressing each thing each year. If we think too much in silos and just focus on one thing, we won't recognize how things are interconnected. So the reality is the city's got 35,000 employees. We do focus on things simultaneously, and we spread things out. So I'll pass it on to for further comments.
Further comment, if you plan properly, you will be doing multiple priorities. If you plan properly, then you will be doing things sequentially and nothing will get to a crisis state. If you are going to do roads and it's not this road this year and it's planned for in the 5-year budget, it isn't quite there, but it will be in 5 years. Because you have the funding there and because it needs to be done in 5 years, you might be better to do it today. You can also, when she talks about moving things out throughout a complex city, you don't want to be concentrating in any one particular area of the city, and jealousies come out of it. Emergencies and priorities will happen. I will talk about one specific program that moves money around the city and goes into each ward is the street art program, which I participated in, which they try and put some funds into each ward, and they don't fund a project 100%, and they're looking for partnership funding. And it's a very successful one, but it's one that does not put all its eggs into one basket.
Thank you very much. Do I have a comment from the agree side?
Yes, my name's Barbara. First, I want to speak to what you said about the 35,000 employees and the fact that there are so many things going on, and I think that's really the problem. If you take a look at priorities, you're not saying that you're going to shut down funding on any particular thing or all things at one time. You're just saying the funding is not necessarily going to go there. And I don't know, I think that sometimes if you've got too many things on the menu, you're not really going to do a good job when you're cooking. And I think that as well, the main priorities for me when I take a look at the City of Toronto and what's going on, I think about transportation, I think about housing, I think about employment, and I think about seniors' issues. And I think those things are really key. And if we can focus on those things and not necessarily take away all the money from all the other things, but just sort of focus on those things that are really important, that really have issues right now, today, and will continue to have repercussions on Toronto, then we're better off. And I think that when you take a look at cities that are successful at that, they do. They actually say, okay, for example, Philadelphia and Cleaner Water, they said, this is what we want to do about our water, and they did something. And if you take a look at Texas had a 1 cent, a penny tax for transportation, where everybody put in a penny, and it actually made a difference in the transit system. So you have those things, and I think affordable housing is key. If you take a look at what's on the books now, there are 22,000 units that perhaps may be in danger of closing. You can go to the website, the TCH website, and see this. So, I mean, these are major priorities, and I think if you can, I never thought I'd hear myself say that, because I do believe in dreaming, and I do believe in aspiring, and I think that will come if you can really focus on these things now. I think I went over my 2 minutes, sorry.
Thank you very much. So, moving back to the disagree side, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Paul Codd. A lot that I hear in relation to priorities is quite interesting. I believe that all people should be treated equally, but not all people have equal needs or desires. For me to assume that my priority is more important than yours or anyone else's is a fallacy. Ladies and gentlemen, this past year, we had 2 people from a group called Right to Housing Coalition go to the United Nations in Geneva. What they found was that Canada, which includes Toronto, is very lacking in relation to housing. We have no national housing strategy. In relation to a lot of other things, such as minimum wage, earning less than $15 per hour puts you 16% below the poverty line. Is this the just society that was promised to us by the earlier Mr. Trudeau? Ladies and gentlemen, you look at our city, $1 billion being spent on the police. I have friends who have been assaulted by the police because they were Native or they were transy or for what other reason they were different. We have to take everyone's priorities into consideration. And by taking their priorities into consideration, they become ours, because it's much the same as saying, if a person bleeds in a village, the whole village is bleeding. So to deny someone else's priorities is to deny who and what they are. Is that the kind of Canada, the type of Toronto that we're aiming for? We should respect, enjoy, and help wherever we can with people's priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Turning the floor back over to the agree side. Would somebody like to address that?
I just wanted to ask a question then. Do you see the priorities being poverty or employment? Or I'm not clear.
Oh my gosh, that is a difficult question. Because if you look, and I know what you said, in relation to housing, in Toronto, there was 97,000 families waiting on the waiting list for affordable housing. I believe this past year, John Tory said that we should put 300 units aside so that people could move into them. If my math is correct, that would take 323 years and 4 months for the last person on that list. In relation to economics, you look at minimum wage. Yes, that is very important because most people in this province, in this city, in this country do not earn a minimum wage. There are a lot of areas where people need to be helped.
In this case, it would be employment and housing.
Oh my gosh, I believe a group that I belong to, C2C, Commitment to Community, has come up with there being 5 distinct priorities, if you will. But that doesn't mean you disrespect the others.
So this is an interesting debate, and I think we've come right to the heart of the issue about which priorities do we set, right? There's so many that are neglected. There's so many urgent priorities that right across the board we all need to address versus focusing in on solving very specific problems, like take the city forward at this moment in its evolution, and whose priorities come first, and what are the priorities, and how do we set priorities? That's what I'm hearing. We've come right to the heart of this debate. Yeah. So this is one of the shorter rounds. We're going to want to finish in 5 minutes. So I do welcome closing statements from both sides, and I ask you to maybe reflect a little bit on something that has really jumped out at you or something you heard that was new, and really try and give a lasting final argument to your side. So to the agree side, I see Michael down at the end. Begin.
Sure, I agree that there are lots of priorities. It doesn't have to be, do we find 2 or 3? So sure, there are complex issues and there are many priorities. But we do have to make decisions. I feel like this question came out of sort of kind of an operational point of view, like the staff are trying to figure out how they should spend their time. Should they spend their time like beating the drum on 1 or 2 things, or should they worry about the whole city? I mean, if that's what I thought this was about, I'd probably be on the other side, because of course they have to worry about all kinds of things. But the problem is that then it bleeds into like do everything, and that's where I don't agree. There has to be decisions made about what we're going to do, what are above the line and what's below the line. And I'm still basically feeling like the whole financial plan conversation has not really gotten to that point.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to just quickly ask one of the
Sure.
members, is it possible to be able to do that? To what we're talking about here, to actually say, okay, we're going to take a look at 4 things out of the 10 and really throw our energy into that?
Sorry. It is possible. I mean, staff do that as part of the budget setting process every year. I mean, that is also what this consultation is in part about, that we do have priorities that are set and strategies that are set by council as policies and long-term strategies, but the question is many of them don't have funding levels that are necessarily there, and we have to prioritize how those funding levels are set. So the question is in part, how do we, as we're approaching these various policies and strategies, how do we prioritize those funding levels to, say, the senior strategy, certain capital plans. So in effect, that's sort of the exercise that we're going through now with this exercise and on a regular basis every year with our capital and operational planning process.
Okay. Thank you. Can I invite a closing statement from this side, front of the room? I think I'll take one more. So 3 more speakers. We're going to close the book, and then we're going to move on to the next debate.
But I just want to say, since city council, the council had been approved unanimously last 2015 about this poverty reduction strategy. I think the 5-finger, housing, employment, services, transit, and then food security, these are the top 5. I think these 5 should be going on as a priority. At the same time, not neglected one or the other. And if the council neglect one another, then don't consider this 5 as the top 5 priority for this poverty reduction strategy. It doesn't make sense to me. Okay. And so, especially I haven't seen since the approval of this PRS 2015, I didn't see any advancement in this housing waiting list. The list going longer, yet does not solve the problem. And at least do something, like rent supplement, anything like that. and I have difficult time to find a proper housing. I'm living in a damp and mold and cold places. I had to wear winter coat in my place in the winter time. And then transit is a little bit help already in the coming March, but I would like to see more, because even with the discount on the Metro Pass, I don't think people with low income can really afford that pass, even though it is the discount of 21%. Honestly, you ask me, I don't think I can buy the pass, even after discount. And then the childcare services, all these things, is the list is so long, but it's not yet any improvement on that. So I would like to see all these 5 fingers be moved at the same time as a priority. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Final closing statement from the agree side. Who's nominated? You want to make one final statement? Okay.
So, when you're looking at these questions, so for example, housing, affordable housing, that's a very complex problem. It's going to be $2.4 billion roughly to make a dent on it. How? If we were to move it forward every single year, how would we be able to capture that amount of funding to actually solve the problem? Should we do it 40%, 30%, 10%? You need to make sure that you have the amount of funding, the amount of resources, the amount of people to actually solve that problem. So in that housing itself, the entire city could work to just solve that one problem. But then what do you do about all the other ones, right? So is it better to push things forward a little bit and not see any improvement? Or should the city focus its resources and just solve that one problem? And then housing is fixed, and everybody, how many people's lives would that improve? So if housing is priority number 1, consolidate your resources and you can solve it. Now, the other point is that just because your priority wasn't the one that was chosen doesn't make your priority less. It's not a respect thing. It just means the city is working on this one first because it has a limited amount of resources and they want to solve the problem correctly. The fastest way to make anything fail is to underfund it and don't give it the proper support. And so you need to make sure that for each initiative that is a priority, you have to solve it. And the only way to do it for some of these large projects, transit's my file, is a large amount of money, solving it, going in with the proper support of the city.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say one more thing on that, and that is that it can't just be the city. It has to be, as somebody said earlier, it's got to work on the federal level, on the provincial level, and the municipal level. Otherwise, it's not going to get done.
You are giving us a sneak peek at the next debate, so please stick around. It's about city powers.
Can I just ask one? I don't want to make a final comment. I just want to make something that hasn't been thrown on the table here. Do any one of these sides encourage or assist in a direction the city seems to be going in more is private-public partnerships? And it's not something that's been on the table here much. The START program certainly is a city and public or private and public project, but in the sense of giving monies out or funding multiple and having the multiple seeking private funding may give a argument towards more projects rather than less. Yes.
What does the government deliver and what is delivered through other means? The question is, what does the government deliver, and are there other ways of solving it? That's okay. Thank you very much. That concludes this debate. We do have both resolutions out there right now. We are moving on to our next and final debate. It's about